We know when the Guardians are playing their first home game in the playoffs. We're one day closer to knowing who that will be against. And if day one of the Major League Baseball playoffs is any indication, as we said yesterday, it's going to be a wild ride. Buckle up.
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner, I should say, of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today.
The Tigers stayed hot and won a game they had to win. We'll get into what we learned from Astros-Tigers game one as we get a step closer to knowing who the Guardians will play in the ALDS. We're going to get into how we think pitchers are going to attack the Guardians lineup, and we're going to get into the latest on the roster decisions and deployment options for the roster going into ALDS this weekend.
For those of you who do not know me, we're going to do your favorite part of the show. I am Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here, one of the original Locked On Baseball podcasters, all 1,300 episodes so far. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst, nationally featured at Scout and 24/7. And before that, I was your 20th favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has or will exist.
20, interesting. You didn't have one yesterday because we skipped the intros yesterday.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Andre kind of got rolling, and we decided not to stop him.
Yeah. Thanks again to Andre for joining us on an off day, and there wasn't anything going on at the Guardians, so he could have easily just hung out with his family and decided to make time for us. We always appreciate that. If you didn't have a chance to listen, go back and listen. A lot of good insights on Austin Hedges, of course, but the bullpen, coaching, what made the Guardians tick this year, and what they're going to have to do to get through the postseason. He gave us a lot of good insights there. I am not Andrew Knott, though. I am Justin Latta, and I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. And he read me at places like the News Herald, the Morning Journal, Guardians Baseball Insider, Prospects Live. Burning River Baseball was a thing once upon a time. I was also a part of. Good times there. I remember doing like a lot of podcasting very late at night before podcasting was like crazy everywhere. About the 2016 World Series. That was a fun time. Hopefully we can do that again this year. The game one, man, that was, I tweeted, I said, that's if your heart was not pumping after that game was over, I think you just need to see a doctor, or you just don't like baseball. That was a great game one. The two games on Monday, at least I shouldn't say two, I should say game one. Game two was relatively inauspicious for Braves Mets on Monday, but game one was crazy. And this game between the Tigers and the Astros was really crazy. And
was it crazy? I felt like Detroit jumped out and they just took care of business. Like I think it's crazy because people just were not betting on Detroit, right? Like it's not like, I think in some respects, like the Mets and Brewers was crazier, but I just think so many people thought like the Astros were a foregone conclusion.
Probably. I think to me, yeah, it was. And if you listened to me yesterday, I talked about how the over-under was 6.5 for runs scored, and it was 3-1. And I said, take the under, and I was right on that one. Very shocking. That was not a hard pick to make. But, yeah, Tarik Skubal was out there. He was dominant. Framber Valdez was not on the top of his game, really. And 3 of the 4 games on Monday, it took until the late game, the Padres and Braves, to see a home run. So the Orioles and Royals was a 1-0 game. That was a crazy game just for being 1-0. And the Royals bullpen shutting the door after Cole Reagans came out with cramping. But there were no home runs hit in either of the AL games. There was no home run between the Brewers and the Mets, which is crazy. But I mean, the Tigers did all of their work offensively in 1 inning, and it was a bunch of 2-out singles. And there was no power there. I think Riley Green might have had like the only extra base hit for the Tigers in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Like that game was just a weird game. But the Tigers, yeah, Riley Green and Andy Ibanez had a double. They had 2 extra base hits in that game. The Astros had a double from Yordan Alvarez in the 9th inning. So there were 3 extra base hits in that game, let alone any real serious damage or runs. But Tarik Skubal was as good as we expected him to be. Framber Valdez was not as good as we expected to be. And now the Tigers are one game closer to moving on to the ALDS. And the prospect of facing, it would have been either way. I think facing Framber Valdez twice in a 5-game series seems hard. And so does Tarik Skubal. I think I'm more scared of Tarik Skubal, though. I mean, he's going to be
100%.
probably the unanimous Cy Young Award winner. I don't know, man. Like that, he was just really good. The Tigers, though, had a good game plan against Framber Valdez. Like, his sinker was up most of the game. He couldn't get it down. He didn't throw a whole lot of changeups, which is weird. Maybe the Tigers don't do well against changeups. I don't really know.
They're fine against.
Fine, yeah.
They're pretty good against changeups. Yeah, when I went and looked, like they're pretty solid against changeups. Like they're better in Cleveland, and we'll save some info about how Cleveland is against changeups later in the show.
So they had a good game plan against Framber Valdez, though. Like they let the sinker stay up, and if it was, it's kind of like a knuckleball. If it's high, let it fly. If it's low, let it go. They were comfortable going the other way. My question now is, and I love baseball. I love playoff baseball in 2024 because game 2 for the Tigers is going to be Tyler Holton as an opener. So game 2 that potentially could send the Tigers to the ALDS, they're going with an opener, and it looks like it's going to be Reese Olson to follow. So my question now is, and it's Hunter Brown for the Astros, who's had a really good year. My question now is, I think we said no matter what, we wanted this to go 3 games, but I don't know. After seeing what happened this game, do you feel like is the better matchup still the Tigers? And B, do you still want this thing to go 3 games? Because my thing is, I don't know if you feel like the better matchup is the Tigers, do you trust them to win a game 3, considering game 2 and 3, they're basically going to be throwing out a bullpen game both days?
I still want to face the Tigers. Just because this was their best chance to win. Like Framber is great, but Tarik Skubal's the best pitcher in the American League by significant margin this past year. Is maybe the best left-hand pitcher in baseball. I know Chris Sale was great as well, but Sale's not on the postseason roster because of health. So Skubal is Skubal, and he does not get the roses. Isn't that what we're supposed to say? He doesn't get the roses he deserves. He does not get enough credit. He doesn't get anywhere near enough credit. That's even with people saying he's the runaway Cy Young. He's really good. So Detroit should have won that game. You have an advantage in that matchup because Skubal is so good. So I don't know if it's going to shift too much. My overall view, it's like tomorrow they're throwing a bullpen game. Kind of, right? Like it's essentially a way to kind of hide Reese Olson and see if you can mess with their lineup. Personally, because it's kind of like a game of chicken, right? Like, okay, we're throwing a lefty. Are you going to line up like we're facing a lefty? If you put out your typical lineup against a righty, knowing Reese Olson's going to throw the majority of the game, they might leave Olson out there, or Tyler Holton, I should say, for 3 innings instead of like the 1. But then again, if you put a lineup that's designed against the lefty, then Holton's probably only going to go like 1 inning, and they'll flip it the other way. It's strategy. It's an interesting strategy. I approve. It is going to be interesting who they throw in game 3. Their bullpen has it's half guys who were spent half the year in AAA and then half the year in the majors. They're such an interesting team, but it's that bullpen where I Jason Foley was their main save guy this year, and the numbers aren't really great when you dig deep on him. The lineup does not have the strong pieces that Houston has. Like Riley Green is fantastic. Kerry Carpenter is really good against right-handed pitching, but Houston has better depth. Like I would still rather face the Tigers. And in terms of going deep, I guess you want them to win tomorrow because, Casey Mize is probably their 3rd best guy and he's pitching out of the pen. So at least that knocks out Skubal is so far ahead of everyone else, but Olson is really solid. So you're knocking out Olson and then going, with their other pieces. So I guess you do want them probably to clinch tomorrow just because it makes Olson further down the line.
Yeah, I think ideally this would go 3 just so if it goes 3 games, and the Astros win, that's obviously the ideal outcome for facing the Astros. Like, You didn't want the Astros to win in 2, and they're not going to do that now, which is a good outcome for Cleveland.
I don't know. I think winning in 2 with the Astros would have been good too, because this team's so much better against lefties, and they're going to throw their only righty in tomorrow's game. But it's impossible. So, but
it still sets them up better. They don't have to go to, because for Houston, we were just kind of looking at the rotation. They went with Framber in game 1. They're going to go Hunter Brown game 2. Game 3 likely is Yusei Kikuchi, because they threw Ronel Blanco out of the bullpen in game 1. So he's going to be unavailable probably.
And it should be Kikuchi. They went and paid a high price. And he was awesome for them.
He was.
Down the stretch. You
want game 1 of the ALDS. It would have to be at this point either Justin Verlander or Spencer Arrighetti, who Arrighetti has been okay, but Verlander's been a mess lately, and he wasn't even on the wild card roster. And that's a huge sign to where the other pitchers are, but also where he is. So that's a good matchup for Cleveland in game 1, Verlander versus Bibee. You have an advantage. Whereas Kikuchi, maybe you still have an advantage, but it's not as big. And I can't believe I'm saying Bibee versus Verlander. It's Bibee advantage, but in 2024, it's absolutely true.
It is.
But for the Tigers, I'm with you. I think if you look at the rosters, and I know I've been saying for a couple of days now that I think the Tigers will wear out just from this run they've been on, because it's taken so much effort, and they won game 1. People are going to say, well, you're an idiot. And maybe I am an idiot. I probably am. But they won the Skubal start. They had to win that one to have a chance to win the series, and they did. I think now we're going to see how well this approach works. We've never, Cleveland bullpenned a little bit in 2016 on necessity, and the Tigers are doing the same thing on necessity now. Other teams have done it too, but yeah, you're going to throw Holton, which by the way, Tyler Holton is no scrub. 94 innings this year, 2.19 ERA, 3.17 FIP. Like he's been a legit pitcher for them in all kinds of roles. So you're right. If they roll out a lineup knowing they're going to face a right-handed pitcher most of the game, then he might make them struggle for sure. Early on, that could be good. They just got to get an early lead, and that's the blueprint, right? You saw it. They got a 3-0 lead early. Skubal shut them down. They brought their bullpen in. It got hairy with Foley late, but they figured out a way to get out of there. I did not think the Tigers were going to close that out once they scored that first run. I thought it was over. So I don't trust the Tigers' approach to work 2 times. I think they have to win it on Wednesday to advance if you want to see the Tigers. I mean, anything can happen in a game 3. I'll say this too. I saw today a stat: 14 of 16 teams that have won game 1 in the wild card, in the 3-game wild card era, have gone on to win the series. So good sign for the Tigers, but we'll see if the pitching really works for them tomorrow or today versus Hunter Brown, who's going to be a really tough customer, who, by the way, a group of Tigers fans, going to be a lot of fun. But I agree. Tigers better matchup, but I think the best chance for them to advance is to win game 2, because game 3,
yes,
it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be bullpen, and it's going to be Casey Mize and Kikuchi versus Casey Mize. I'm taking Kikuchi with how he's been with the Astros. So
today it's not as strong against lefties versus righties.
Yeah. So today is that's why you said like Kerry Carpenter was out and they didn't have Cole Keithan. So today is the day for the Tigers. If they're going to move on, it's got to be today, I think. All right, we'll talk about anything else we might have learned from that game. We'll talk about some scouting reports, how the other teams might pitch to the Guardians. We're going to talk about some roster options, some updates from the Guardians' first media availability of the postseason on the rest of today's show.
But first, we're going to talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Let's look at some of the things for tomorrow. It starts in 15 hours. That Yordan Alvarez can have 2+ hits, Kyle Tucker 2+ hits, Jose Avila 2+ hits, and Houston with the money line. If you think that's true, you can wager 10 and make $83 on that one. That's certainly an interesting parlay that is occurring. See, Kansas City is the favorite tomorrow against Baltimore. That is, with Lugo versus Eflin, I can see that. Manea versus Montes. You got the Brewers being the favorites. I kind of prefer the Mets in that one. But if any of these lines appeal to you and you want to go join a fantastic partner of ours, you want to head over to FanDuel. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And next up are other good friends over at PrizePicks. Listen, they're not competitors; they can be friends. PrizePicks it's a simple game. It's a real simple game. You're going to pick 2 to 6 stat categories, and you're going to say more or less. It's as easy as that, more or less. And you can get up to 6 times your money when you are at PrizePicks. And it puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When you hit your picks, you can get your money as quick as 15 minutes. If I head over right now and click play now on our good friends over at PrizePicks, let's see what their MLB stuff for tomorrow is. My browser is having an issue, so I can't. But I can tell you that they have had so many fun things occurring at PrizePicks. Head over there today, and remember, they also invented FlexPay, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't fit. And best of all, when you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday. Today, each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% off to provide even more value to your lineups. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Over at Locked On MLB, our pal Sully will have recaps for you from all of the first day of playoff action, coaching changes, all kinds of offseason storylines, mostly playoff stuff, though. So if you want to get a good above the view, 1,000-foot view perspective of all those first round games, those first games, Orioles, Royals, the Padres and Braves just went final 4-0. So we'll have that for you over at Locked On MLB after you're done listening to us, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day.
My team.
Let's go.
No one talks about Cleveland.
Yeah, no one talks about Cleveland. I'm sure Sully's not talking about Cleveland quite yet. We'll see, maybe. Let's quickly update some roster decisions for the Guardians. So Tanner Bybee, we know, threw a sim game on Monday. Stephen Vogt was very coy about rotation plans and everything else they've been doing. Shocking. You get nothing from pre and post game press conferences really anymore. Andre told us that yesterday. It's just a bunch of fluff and cliches, which it's whatever. And he said, if he's saying cliches, that means things are going good. So Tanner did throw I think he said 75 pitch sim game on Monday. So he didn't say Bybee would be the game 1 starter on Saturday, but that lines him up to start Saturday, which by the way will be at 1:00. We just found out on Saturday. So see you there. Alex Cobb is going to throw a sim game on Thursday. That would be October 3rd. So game 1 is Saturday. Game 2 is the 7th, the Monday. And then game 3 is the 9th because there's an off day on the 8th, Tuesday for travel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That lines up Cobb, if everything goes well, to be the game 3 starter on October 9th in Houston or in Detroit. How much do we think if Cobb is able to go? Because his last start was September 1st. They brought him off the injured list to start against the Pirates.
Wasn't that the game? He was like perfect. It was perfect or no hitter really late. Like that was that game, right?
Yeah, it was against the Pirates. Him and Manzardo were the quote unquote September call ups.
Yeah.
So he has not pitched in a game since September 1st. That was 6 innings. So he's going to basically go a month without a start. And and they say this about Tanner too. They try to create a good atmosphere for him, all that kind of stuff. You can do all the sim games you want. How much do you trust Cobb? Like how deep do we think Cobb is getting if he is your game 3 starter? Which, by the way, to me, this says that Boyd is your game 2 starter.
Yeah,
more than likely. That's a good question. We can also ask, because if you're going Tanner, Boyd, and Cobb, where does that leave Williams? Because you don't need a 4th starter in the first round for the Guardians because of having the bye. So that leaves the question Williams. So if Cobb starts a game, how deep do you think he can go at this point? How deep? Tarik Skubal faced 23 batters. That was 3 times through the order. I know Michael King for the Padres went 7, but he was just on a force. But to me, Tarik Skubal is the best pitcher in the postseason right now. Out of every pitcher in the postseason, Tarik Skubal is the top pitcher. He went 3 times. He went 23 batters. That's one. It's 2 times through the order plus 2 batters. If Tarik Skubal's not going 3 times through the order, nobody else is. I know King did, but different circumstance.
Yeah, with everything that's gone, it almost feels like, doesn't it feel like Gavin and Cobb are almost like conjoined? Like, is kind of my thought. Like, you're maybe hoping for both of them to kind of like in spring training when we're doing back-to-backs, just because of how little Cobb has pitched. Like, he's had 3 starts all year, right? That's it.
Yes, 3 starts at the major league level. I think like 3 at the minor league level.
Yeah.
He's never come out of the bullpen either. I just was looking. He's never been out of the bullpen, and neither has Gavin. And the plan for Gavin on Sunday was supposed to be to come in behind Nick Sandlin to get him some experience coming out of the bullpen. So neither of those guys have come out of the bullpen. You probably need both to win this series, no matter who you're facing. One of these guys, I would imagine, is coming out of the bullpen. I don't know which one is. Cobb, maybe Cobb only gets a couple of innings. Maybe he gets you 2 or 3 innings max. But you also bring Williams out of the bullpen. You bring him into a clean inning, maybe it's like a start, but there's no guarantees, right? But I don't know. What are the odds they piece that together? A Cobb and Gavin start. Like you get 2 from Cobb and 3 from Gavin, and you go to the bullpen. It kind of feels like it's the way it's shaping up. But again, neither one of them have ever pitched out of the bullpen at the major league level.
And I mean, or is it just that your rotation is, you and I talked beforehand. It's like, depending on who you feel, like Houston is very good against lefties, very good against righties. Detroit, definitely, I want to say, when I looked, maybe I'll have this wrong, is not good against lefties, because you are pulling out Carpenter, who's probably their second most successful hitter over the last 2 years, and you're pulling out Cole Keith, who had a fantastic second half. Mm-hmm. So like, there's a world where, like, if you're facing, 4 games in the 5-game series with Houston, maybe you go more righty heavy. If you're facing Detroit, maybe Cantillo is your third starter. Maybe you go back-to-back lefties, and that's a Cantillo-Cobb combination as opposed to, Cobb-Williams. Maybe it's more dependent.
Where does Gavin fit in for you then at that point, though?
Then you got a nice, you try him in the role. Like, maybe if you're up a few runs, that I know we wanted to get the experience, but like, how much experience really is 1 game in it? If you can have him go out there and just throw 2 pitches like that. I mean, he has struggled with inconsistencies because he's been a reliever starting most of the year. He's been a 2-pitch guy. So this might be the ideal role for him, with him just not going out and using that full complement throughout the course of this year.
Yeah, his fastball has been really bad this year by all metrics. And, Carl Willis had said that they thought he was tipping his fastball, and that's been part of it. Because if you look at everything else, the spin and the velocity are fine. Control for him has been pretty spotty. And I think teams can eliminate his other pitches because he just has had horrible command this year. Mm-hmm. Just recovering from his injury and coming in halfway through the year. And that makes, you don't have to tip your pitches when other teams don't respect any of the other offerings. And you took away the slider and he'd moved it to like a cutter slider, whatever it was. But you're right. I can envision, and this is crazy to think how deep this thing can get. But let's just imagine you roll with Bybee, Boyd, and then you go with Cobb as your 3 and Williams is kind of like your 4. And I know you said Cantillo maybe factors in, but I don't know. I kind of think maybe you do more of Eric. I don't know. Eric Sabrowski's never started a game either, but maybe you do what the Tigers are doing, and you do Sabrowski opening a game. I guess you could put Cantillo on the roster, and you can have him as an opener, only go 2 innings, and then you can go to Williams. But just imagine this clicks for Gavin, right? He goes to the bullpen. The fastball is a little better because he's coming out of the bullpen. He's not trying to go 6. He's trying to go 3 maybe. And he already throws pretty hard as it is. And then the curveball and the slider/cutter gets better because, it just plays up out of the bullpen. Imagine adding that weapon to the bullpen. Like that could be a serious game changer for the Guardians throughout the playoffs. If Gavin Williams, nobody's ever seen him out of the bullpen before. So yeah, that's definitely going to make you nervous for the Guardians. But if that works out and you think, okay, this could work for us because you have Lively, you have Cantillo to consider. If Gavin just becomes a guy that you can rely on for 2 or 3 innings every couple of days in the postseason with off days, that's a weapon that no one's seen before that could be a huge difference maker.
Oh, I agree. And we've seen like people, we saw Coburn Burns deploying a new pitch. It's newness is maybe your best weapon. Novelty might be the best weapon you have in the postseason. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Corbin Burns and Andre said like Tanner's got other stuff up his sleeve too that he's used early in the year that teams maybe have not scouted either. And scouting's a big part of this. So we're going to talk about that in a second. How pitchers are going to attack the Guardians hitters. Tomorrow we'll probably explore more how they'll need to attack other teams' hitters when we get into that. And then just talk about postseason scouting in general, because I remember how this went in 2016 and just talk about the difference that makes as well. So all of that to finish up today's Locked On Guardians. Today's episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Are you ready to explore Detroit? I've never been to Detroit. My wife has been to that stadium. She says it's a great stadium. I want to go one day. I don't know if ALDS is necessarily in the cards for Detroit, but it's one of those things I want to hit one day. And I know Booking.com, if we're going to have an overnight stay in Detroit for that, I definitely plan on using Booking.com. Wouldn't be the first time for me. I used it for my Hall of Fame trip at Cooperstown in 2018 to go see Jim Thome. I will do it one day when it's Jose Ramirez and Emmanuel Clase, at least definitely Jose Ramirez. Clase on the way too. I'll definitely be using it for that. And I'm sure they have options for Houston as well. But I got to imagine the prices in Detroit will be much, much better because it's a little bit closer and it's within driving distance. Really exciting to be able to have an all AL Central ALDS. You might have it'll be the Yankees on the other side. Maybe the Royals. The Royals won game 1 too. So start planning your options to go to the ALCS, maybe to New York or maybe Kansas City as well. All the AL Central teams, all Booking.com can have that done for you and make you a fan of any U.S. city. Detroit, Houston, New York, Kansas City, Baltimore, all those places. Booking.com can make you a fan of any of those U.S. cities and the right stay, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Well, you heard it before, 1 o'clock on Saturday in Cleveland. It'll be Guardians hosting maybe the Tigers, maybe the Astros. Either way, it'll be at 1 o'clock, and you can catch on your SiriusXM app all the action, just searching Guardians. All right, let's get into a little bit of scouting here to end today's show. So, Jeff, you took we took 2 different approaches to this. You took a whole team approach. I kind of took a batter by batter approach, pitch by pitch. I started with the Astros because I got to be honest, I assumed, and maybe it'll still turn out this way, that I assumed that the Astros would win this series. And I kind of looked at who the Tigers and Astros will be deploying and what Cleveland excels and struggles against. I will say my one takeaway from this bit of research is the Guardians have options against every pitch. It's going to take a very different approach for the entire lineup. That's the good thing. There's not one pitch to me that the entire team struggles against where you're like, oh man, if they throw this pitch, like they're completely,
the cutter.
Yeah, okay. I didn't dive into the cutter, so you can talk about that.
Yeah,
I'd have to go individual by individual. But like I looked up sinkers and curves and changeups and four seams and sliders. And there are guys throughout the lineup that I think are good at. So if you have a certain pitcher who excels at sliders or excels at like sinkers and curves, like Framber Valdez, that's going to beat some guys in your lineup for sure. And it's going to be tough because you're going to be relying on some guys to do all the work. But I was just looking at Framber Valdez as an example, who is very sinker, changeup, curveball heavy. Bo Naylor has had a good season against the sinker for all his struggles. Jose crushes sinkers. Juan, great against sinkers. Rocchio, middle of the road. When it comes to changeups, Lane Thomas crushes changeups. Andre Gimenez, pretty solid. Manzardo in the major leagues has been solid, although ex-Woba tends to differ on how legitimate that is. And then curveballs. Jose, great against the curve. Fry, great against the curve. Bo Naylor has had success against the curve, but X-Woba says it's a little bit of luck. But I mean, there's guys throughout the lineup that excel against certain pitches. So I'll be very curious to see how they attack. But there are definitely weak spots in this lineup that guys are going to be able to exploit. But they have guys throughout the lineup, I think, that match up well, no matter what strategy they take or who's on the mound.
Yeah, it's interesting because, all we've heard all year is like this team's bad against changeups. And then, like, when I dug into the numbers, changeups are actually one of their most effective pitches. It's one of the few ones they have a positive run value against this year. They are 17th, tied for 17th best in baseball, if you want to be negative, which felt like everyone wanted to be today, 13th worst. But it's not. Now, in general, teams do well against the changeup. But yeah, Cleveland actually did quite well in general as a team. Curveball, positive value as well. That was actually the most successful pitch. I thought it was interesting. If you group fastballs as a whole, they were 19th and like a -1, but they had the second lowest percentage of fastballs thrown to them this year. Going back to the change, actually they had the highest percentages of changes thrown to them, which we saw, but they were effective against it on the whole. The interesting thing with the fastball is they're good against the four seam. That's actually their best pitcher. Top 10 team against the four seam fastball. Sinker and cutter, atrocious. Like, I remember I was in Milwaukee for that series. I told my whole story about my first time in the press box. Milwaukee threw sinkers and cutters that entire weekend. Every single pitcher was like, Savali was almost a 2-pitch guy in that start. He was double XL, sinker, cutter. That's all. Just those two pitches. But yeah, they were really bad. The cutter is the only pitch that they were bottom 3 against when I was looking at. Slider, they weren't great against either. Negative value. They were tied, but again, tied for 18th. It's not like they're the bottom of the bottom. They saw the 11th most. So they do see a lot of changes, but they actually, as a team, hit them well. They really kill four seams. You should probably stick with sinker, cutter, slider if you can. Those are their biggest negative. And changing curve, positive values. So yeah, it'll be fun when we know who they're facing, so we can look at their pitch mix and see how Cleveland's pitch mix matches up against the team they're going to face. But I just thought it was interesting because all year the focus has been like, they can't hit a change up to save their lives. And so, well, actually, according to data, they can.
Yeah, I mean, again, they have guys in the team. I was just trying to look up velocity too, because that was the one thing we talked about early in the year is velocity and how they struggle against a certain measure of velocity, and I haven't been able to hone in on that on Savant to find.
I might be able to while you talk. You talk, and I'll see if I can use my page I'm on to.
Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to dig into velocity specifically, but you're right. There are guys throughout the lineup who excel against certain things. Like Framber Valdez is weird. Like if this ends up being Houston and Cleveland still.
What you want, 95 or better or 96 or better?
I think last time we did this, we did 95 or better.
Okay. I'll get that done.
So Valdez, like, he throws 45% thinkers, although he went much heavier on changeups against the Tigers in game 1, which I thought was interesting. Like, his sinker yields a 276 batting average, 399 slug, 301 expected batting average, 459 expected slug, with a launch angle of 1, which means nobody gets that in the air. And I think the run value on his sinker was like plus 10. So the results say like it should be bad, but it's not. So I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of, like, again, the team excels against sinkers. Like, just looking at this, Bo Naylor 415 weighted on base average against sinkers. Jose 407, even Schneemann 377, Quan 360. They got guys who hit sinkers. So you got Skubal who throws a lot of sinkers. You got Hader who throws like kind of I don't know. Hader's a different matchup for the Astros, really. But Brown throws a sinker, and it's a really good one.
So according to this, to interrupt you, if you use all pitches, I grabbed all of them, and I did greater than or equal to 95.
Mm-hmm.
So values greater than that. Cleveland actually has, based on batter run value, they are tied for 10th with Houston with that. If you just want their weighted on base, they are, let's see, in terms of, I had to go the wrong way. Weighted on base would have them. Now I got to do some counting. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14th in weighted on base. So they actually got better as the year went on. And they actually saw, interestingly enough, the lowest percentage of those pitches of any team in baseball. Because teams didn't want to throw them fastballs, and specifically 5-seam fastball or 4-seam fastballs. No one's throwing them the 5-seam, but no one wanted to throw the 4-seam fastball, and they had the second lowest percentage of fastballs in general. So because so many players rely on that, and a lot of the higher velocity ones are 4-seam, so that's why they had the lowest percentage of those pitches. And the data, like I said, they're top 10. It's a negative score. As a negative overall score, but because most people are poor against high velocity.
Yeah. I just found the metric to range it, and it's Stephen Kwan 431 weighted on base average against fastballs 95 or greater. Lane Thomas 392, Manzardo 383. That's a good one right there. Jose 382, and then after that it's a steep drop off. You have Noel at 336, Schneemann 332, Hedges 331. Although expected weighted on base does not hold that up. Fry a little bit better. I don't know. It's going to take. There's not going to be one bulk approach, obviously, to these guys. Like, and I want to go back to an example, like 2016 in the World Series. Like they figured out, like Javi Baez, right? Sliders low, fastballs high, chases everything. Like this is how granular scouting gets. They obviously have had scouts down in Houston for this series. They've had scouts following Houston, the Tigers, the Twins, the Royals for weeks now. And I know specifically it's the same way. They have pro scouts following each team. And I know there's been an Astros and a Tigers guy. Obviously, the Astros are just in town, but they've had guys in Cleveland for a while now too, up to a month. And that's how you get granular. You get these reports back and you say, okay, you can look at what guys do in the regular season. Like this is a good example. So I said during the regular season, Framber Valdez, 45% sinker usage, right? In the game against the Tigers today, he threw 41% sinkers, but 35% curveballs. Whereas in the regular season, he threw 31% curveballs. So I guess he kind of stayed true to form. Maybe it was Skubal I was thinking of. Skubal, okay. So Tarik Skubal in a normal situation is throwing 33% fastballs and 27% changeups. He threw 36% changeups and 26% fastballs. So he kind of reversed it here in this game on how he attacked the Astros lineup. So you're going to see, guys just kind of digging in and drilling down onto what is a weakness for each guy. I don't know. Again, I came away with Jose is going to be unbeatable. Bo has some strengths. Obviously not going to get a lot of fastballs. Lane Thomas has to hit the changeup. Other guys are not going to do it. Jose's got to hit the curve. Nobody else is going to do it. Slider, not good, right? We said slider bad. Noel hits sliders well, but that's only if you throw him a strike. Otherwise, and that's the thing about Woba. Woba doesn't account for chase rate and strikeout rate. It only accounts for contact and when you do things. So I even looked up splitters. Splitters, Guardians are stinky again. So if they match up with a pitcher who's got a lot of splitters, not going to be in great shape. It's going to be easier for them to scout the Astros, oddly enough. Like we were saying, like, is the Tigers, the Astros a better matchup? You can scout the Astros a little easier because it's going to be Valdez, Brown, Kikuchi, and then maybe one more guy. Blanco, Verlander, maybe. And then their bullpen innings are going to be all pretty much Abreu, Hader, Presley, and Neris. For the Tigers, you're going to get Skubal once or twice if it goes 5. After that, man, you're getting Tyler Holton. You're getting Reese Olson. You're getting Hannafy, Vest, Brisky, Gunther, Jason Foley, Jackson Jobe, who nobody's really seen. Like, the Tigers might be harder to scout because of the whole Johnny Holstaff approach. Like, that makes things a lot more interesting, and I don't know how I feel about that. I know tomorrow, Jeff, we will know the results of Game 2, so we'll talk about that. Will it be the Tigers or the Astros? We'll break what we saw in that game down. We'll get into a little bit of how Guardians pitchers could attack those hitters, and then later in the week, we're getting into key storylines and matchups and our preview for ALDS Game 1.
Yeah, we want to thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily. There's going to be so much fun to talk about. The more data we have, the more things we can talk about. And who knows, we might even know who they're facing, as Justin talked about there. So we want to thank you all. Make sure to go back and listen to yesterday's show with Andre. If you did not, there's some great bits of information. I had someone reach out to me who's like, man, that was my favorite interview I've ever heard with Andre. He gave us a lot of great stuff in that. So make sure you are checking out, rate and review, do your part, be an everydayer. Thank you all to everyone who is, or however the grammar should be there. And go Guardians, go.